Hi guys, I hope you are all doing well and welcome back to another video on Amazon's New World. So whilst the beta may have now finished, I've still got lots of footage and topics that I want to cover before the game actually releases. And today I really want to run through corrupted portals, as despite the nerfs they ended up receiving towards the end of the alpha, they are still a fantastic way to be levelling up your character, gaining territory standing, equipment and Azoth. There are currently 6 types of corrupted breach in New World, 4 solo breaches and 2 group breaches. But before we cover each of them in details and how to close them rapidly, I just want to cover a few key points as to why corrupted breaches work so well. Now, a lot of this is down to the fact that despite calling them solo breaches, they work so much better when you run them as a group. And that is because the XP isn't shared, it's a flat rate. It equally doesn't matter if you are the one to use your Azoth staff to close the portal. So long as you are there and you are landing a few hits on the enemies that are present and you're present when the portal closes, you'll be getting the same experience, the same Azoth, the same equipment chest. But here is the key. It is not the portal XP we are really interested in here, but actually the territory standing you'll be getting for completing these portals. Because when you level up your territory standing, particularly as that territory standing starts to get into the higher levels, 15 plus, you'll be getting a boatload of experience from leveling up the territory standing. And that is really what makes corrupted breaches an effective leveling technique, not so much the direct XP gain from the breaches themselves. In terms of equipment needed for corrupted breaches, a few things have fairly recently changed. Firstly, to actually close the breaches, you're going to need a tier 1 Azoth staff up to level 25 breaches, tier 2 to level 35 and tier 3 up to level 65. Of course, as mentioned before, you don't actually need to close the breaches yourself. So long as someone in your group has a suitably leveled staff, then you're all good to go. So what about level, actually character level? If you're running this as a group, and particularly if you've got a healer, please get a healer, then you can afford to be somewhat underleveled and you can actually still get away with this fine, particularly on the solo breaches if you're running them as a group. And as we'll kind of cover later on, you can pretty skip through some of the breaches fairly quickly. And so you can do that and get away with it. Just bear in mind that if you're going to bring a super low level player with you, they will get one hit and insta-killed by the enemies. By and large, it tends not to really be worth it. Finally, I just want to touch on corrupted tinctures. As long as you've got a healer in your group, they really aren't that necessary. You'll see I actually have some in my equipment slots, but I mostly don't bother using them, so don't stress too much about them. If you've got some, make them easily and want to use them, great, save you a little bit of extra damage, but with a healer, you can get away with it just fine. I ended up running an awful lot of these portals during alpha, and quite a few through the beta as well, and easily the most common way in which I saw newer players dying is to the explosive monsters. Many of the monsters that are going to be spawning from these portals are going to have random attributes. It may be armoured, which results in it taking less damage. Maybe it will have the slimy attribute, in which case it will leave that trail of purple slime behind it, which will slow and hinder your movement. Or maybe it's going to have the explosive attribute, in which case 1 or maybe 2 seconds after the creature dies, it's going to explode, dealing very high damage to anything around it, and it's actually a fairly large explosive radius. Particularly if you're a low level player, this damage will one-shot you. Now I know it sounds obvious, but it's so easy to not read these attributes above the creatures, particularly when you're in the middle of the fight. But if you forget to read it and don't get out of the way in time, it's an extremely frustrating way to die, and an extremely common way to die as well. So for the smaller breaches, or what I would call the solo breaches, even though you should still be running them in a group, I guess we should really come up with a better name for them than that. But there are 4 possible types of these that you're going to encounter. These are corrupted monoliths, infested groves, corrupted portals, and festering hives. To start with the corrupted monoliths, these are super easy to speedrun. One person from the group needs to be assigned to deal with the carapace and the Azoth staff. They should be hanging back while all the others basically take all the aggro from the enemies around the monolith. Then it's just a case of slipping in, destroying the carapace, which should be relatively easy to do, and using your staff to destroy the monolith source in the middle. Once destroyed, that's it. All the enemies will die. There's no need to fight waves upon waves of enemies or clear every creature on the field. Target the source, get it destroyed, and you're done. Next up, we have Infested Groves, or the annoying tentacle guy as I think of it. Ultimately, the goal here is to take down the tentacle in the middle. Don't get too distracted with the other corrupted running around. Once that tentacle is down, it's exactly the same deal as before. The rest of the team should be trying to grab the aggro, whilst one gets in with the Azov staff and gets that thing destroyed. I mean, you can literally smash through this thing in like 30 seconds, and that's really what makes these such an effective source of XP, because they can just be run so fast. After these, we come up against corrupted portals. Now, I'm not sure if it's just my imagination, as these do take the longest to run, but these seem to be the most common corrupted breaches that I come across. No sneaky techniques or cleverness here though. The portals will put you through basically a series of waves in which you'll have to fight off corrupted. Pretty easy to do, but as before, watch out for those explosive ones. Once you've gone through several waves, a final boss wave will spawn, and upon killing that boss, you'll then be able to effectively close up the portal using your Azov staff as you would on others. Finally, we come up against the Festering Hives. As with the other two, try not to get too caught up with the corrupted running around on these ones, as the real prize is through the door and inside the corrupted structure. As kind of with the first two, you'll need your team to take the aggro here, or else you're not really being able to get seated long enough to really be able to use your Azov staff to destroy the corrupted breach in the centre. But once your team actually has that aggro, it's really quite easy to get it taken down. And as before, once destroyed, all the other corrupted die with it and complete the breach. Easy, right? So that just leaves us with the two types of group corrupted breach. These are the larger breach icons on the map, and act as a spawn point for the smaller solo breaches. Realistically, you're going to need a group to run these, as you'll be coming up against some serious opposition. As mentioned, there are two types of corrupted breaches for the larger groups: corrupted portals and corrupted monoliths. Yes, I agree, the naming is very confusing, as it makes use of the same names as the smaller solo breaches, which is why I've tried to name it with solo and group breaches. But you don't want to get these ones confused. Principally though, for the corrupted portals, the layout is the same as a solo or a group. You'll just be needing to fight off a much larger number of waves and a much larger groups of corrupted in the waves before the final boss fight. It's just that you'll be getting significantly harder waves that makes this one the group challenge, because it is very easy to get overwhelmed. Stay together, rely on your healer, and you really should be fine. The group corrupted monoliths, there is a little bit more of a tactic to it. Essentially, you are trying to close 3 breaches around the outside of the central pylon structure. As with the solo breaches, this works best if the group takes the aggro and leaves one player free to use their Azov staff on the breach. The group can then sort of slowly transition and work its way around the pylon to close all 3. If you're more confident, you can split up and try and deal with the 3 breaches individually to save time, but the end result will ultimately be the same. Once the 3 outer breaches have been closed, you're going to have to all get into the middle, destroy the middle carapace and close the middle breach. You do not need to kill all the corrupted here, just keep a group member protected enough for them to use their Azov staff to close it. Once closed, all the remaining corrupted will die and the breach is a success. In principle, this should be quicker than the corrupted portals, but you do have to be a little bit more careful sometimes on this one. If you start to aggro everything at once, there is a lot of stuff around these structures and you can find yourself getting overwhelmed and your healer can't keep up with the amount of damage that's being output by some of these corrupted. That pretty well sums up corrupted breaches. They can be a great way of getting some extra levels. I am still glad that they did get a nerf from the alpha though. Their respawn time and XP rewards got brought down, as they used to be effectively an essential way to level up from 20 all the way to 60. And pretty much made everyone skip past the entire quest system. But they are still an interesting and in part effective part of the game. Just bear in mind they likely won't spawn in for a few days after the server go up, So if you can't see any on the map right at the start, that'll probably be why. Hopefully this has still been an enjoyable video. If so, please give it a like and let me know what you think in the comments down below. We've got a lot more New World content on the way, so do subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you all on the next one.